Hi, my name's Eric Prostko. I'm Extension Weed Specialist at the University of Georgia in the Department of Crop and Soil Sciences. I'm responsible for the Extension Weed Science programs and numerous agronomic crops, including peanuts, field corn, soybeans, grain sorghum, sunflowers, and a few other minor crops. I spend about 50% of my time working on peanuts and the other 50% working on the other crops that I just mentioned. And today I would like to spend just a minute or two talking about the importance of weed control in peanut production systems, because if we don't control weeds, it's very likely that we will not be able to harvest peanuts at all, because it's a two-step process that requires the inversion process and then the combining process. So if weeds are there, it's very detrimental to that process. Additionally, weeds compete with peanuts for resources like sunlight, nutrients, water. And when weeds are present and they're competing for those resources, they're going to prevent those resources being allocated to the peanuts, and that's going to affect the yield of the peanuts. The presence of weeds also influence yields by inhibiting the deposition of fungicides. If we have a lot of weeds in the field, it's harder for fungicide sprays to reach the target, which is the canopy of the peanut plant. And so it's very critical that farmers manage their weeds, both from a yield standpoint, a fungicide standpoint, and a harvesting efficiency standpoint. Also, if we allow weeds to produce seed in our crop, then those weed seed will be there in subsequent rotations, which could then cause a problem. To demonstrate the importance of weed control in peanut production systems, we've got two plots here to highlight. The plot on the left is what we call an untreated check. In fact, this untreated check is mostly showing grass now. There's a little bit of pigweed in there, but we actually came in there probably about a month or two ago and mowed that plot entirely down because the pigweed were so bad we can't get our equipment in here to do effective fungicide sprays. And so we had to mow those down. We would never be able to harvest them with our current peanut harvesting equipment, and this is just a great example. If you look on the left again, that's not treated. It has no herbicide at all. And then the one on the right is our standard program that we recommend for most growers, which includes an application at planting of 3 herbicides, and then somewhere around 30 days after planting, an additional 3 herbicides, for a total of 5 different modes of action that we're using in peanuts, which is extremely beneficial for resistance management. In my opinion, we have not suffered as much as they have in Tennessee and Arkansas. Because we've had peanuts in our rotation in Georgia, we've been able to do some things in peanuts for weed control that they can't do in other states that aren't growing peanuts. So this is just an excellent example of not being able to harvest because of poor weed control and having no problem at all harvesting the crop and or getting fungicides to the canopy throughout the year. One of the most troublesome weeds that we have in peanut production is the plant I'm holding here. It's called Palmer amaranth, and most folks in Georgia would consider it public enemy #1 when we're talking about weeds. It's an extremely interesting plant. It can grow up to 6 or 7 feet tall. Female plants can produce up anywhere from 500,000 seed per plant or more. And so it's extremely competitive and it's hard to control. We've developed some resistances, or the species has evolved some resistances to some of the herbicides that we use. So it's very challenging. You can also see that it gets kind of woody, so it's tough on equipment. If it's left uncontrolled when it's going through an inverter or going through the combine, it can cause some problems. But this is what we spend most of our time working on, is the control of Palmer amaranth. There are many other weeds that we have in peanut, but in the last several years, this has been the one that's really caused growers a lot of heartache. Fortunately, in peanuts, we have some great programs to manage it, and if we implement those programs and we get a little help from Mother Nature with some timely moisture, or if your growers are lucky to have irrigation, we can keep this under control. And one of the main things we want to do is try to prevent these plants from going to seed in the field. As I mentioned, If this is not a female plant, but if it was, it could produce over 500,000 seed that could be dumped back into a field that would cause problems in the future. So this is something that we spend a lot of time. This plant is something we do a lot of work on. It's interesting. I've been here 23 years in Georgia. When I first came here, this plant was not a problem, and then over time, for various reasons, it's become the #1 pest, weed pest that we have in not only peanuts, but most of our agronomic crops. Having clean peanut fields is critical to the success of our peanut production here in Georgia. And we spend a lot of time trying to help our county agents and growers figure out the best ways to manage weeds. What are the best herbicides that we use? Are there other practices that we might use, like tillage or cover crops or row spacing? And incorporating all that together to try to give the farmers the best chance to manage weeds in their peanut crop.